Here come the geese. I've got them baited in over there. Welcome back, guys. Today is a day of getting some work done around here. You see, I've got started on a retainer wall over here. That's been the project so far this morning. These railroad ties are not fun to play with if you've ever done any work with them. They're heavy as hell and really hard to cut. But it is mid-March, and I would very much like to be on the lake today. But I did fish yesterday, caught quite a few, caught a bunch of chain pickerels, something I don't usually catch. So it was fun. Anyways, I had a lot of work I need to do around here, so this is where I'm at for the day. Anyways, so as great as it is to own property like this and to live on a pond and be able to fish and stuff, it's like, there's always something that needs to be fixed, something that needs to be done. Like this retainer wall, I just had to replace it because it was collapsing. Most of these retainer walls are 40 years old. All right, guys, I've got my concrete setting on my post up there, and I gotta wait till that sets before I can do the other ties. So might not do that until later in the week or tomorrow. So right now, what I'm gonna do is, usually about this time is when I start treating my pond. And it's always something or another in the pond that always has to be treated. And it's just the nature of living in the South and having a pond, shallow water, lots of sun, is there's always some kind of growth in here that you don't want. And it's not that it's bad to have the vegetation in the water, but it usually just takes over the pond is the only reason I'm treating. And I'll show you what it is that I'm treating. You can't really see it right now because it's not growing very much, and what is there is subsurface, and we just had a storm a couple of days ago. But I identified it at the end of the summer last year. I didn't treat then because I knew it was just gonna blow up again in the spring, so I'd rather treat now. And I don't plan to treat the whole pond, I just plan to treat areas. Primarily I'm treating spawning grounds for the bluegill, the crappie, and the bass, and I'm trying to do it preceding the spawning season. So crappie season, spawning season is just around the corner, and I want to try to get most of this vegetation gone before they get up here. There's already some moving in. And so what I've got this year is, let me just show you. I've got this hydrothol granular. As I was looking through the Pond Guys website, that's who I go to for all of my pond needs. This one was the most economical that actually resolved the problem that I had. Now, I will say this, whenever you're treating something in a pond, you want to make sure that you identify it first, because you don't want to just randomly start throwing stuff in your pond for something that it doesn't even kill. So I've got some primrose down here, and from what I can tell looking up this, it does nothing for primrose, or at least it's not listed on the list. I'm sure it'll probably knock it down some, but obviously it probably won't kill it. It may, we'll see. I'm going to put some on it just to see. But this is an algicide and a herbicide, so it'll keep the algae knocked down, and it'll kill what I've identified as southern naiad. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. I am not a professional. I just YouTubed it like most people. And this was the cheapest product that I could find. This was 150 bucks for this bag. And again, I'm just going to treat the shoreline right here, and then I'm going to treat the shoreline in this next cove over where the bluegill spawn, the crappie spawn, the bass spawn. Also, I went up and bought fish feed. This is for primarily bluegill and catfish. They have bass on the pictures on here. Bass don't eat this crap. Don't buy this thinking you're going to feed the bass. You are feeding the fish that the bass will eat, so that's a plus, but I've never seen a bass eat this. I have had a few shell crackers eat it, but for the most part they don't even come around. It's mostly bluegill and catfish and turtles. Lots and lots of turtles. But Tractor Supply is really bad about selling out. That's the reason why I bought 3 bags. Most people fill up their pond feeders this time of year, and so they had 3 bags. I bought 3 bags. These are 20 bucks a bag, like $21 a bag. So I went ahead and got 3 of those. So I'm fixing to start throwing that out. Now what I do with that is I throw it out that window. So I have those little dog food containers, the little plastic containers, and I'm fixing to put this in there. Some of it, it all won't fit, but I put it in that sunroom and then I throw it out the window. And the reason why I do that is because I want the fish trained to feed right there so I can fish out the window. And if I don't want to fish out the window, I can come out here and fish off the bank, but the fish are going to be right there. So I'm going to start feeding them. My sister will be in town again in a few weeks, maybe about 6 weeks. She's coming back up to catch bluegill, and hopefully I'll have a bunch of them staged up right there that we can catch here at the house. It's always something good for bad weather. I've also got, you can't see it from here, but I've got a little bundle of wood. I will show you that up close in a minute, but I'm going to make some crappie stake beds out here. I've never made them before, but now that I'm getting a substantial crappie population, I want to give them somewhere suitable to spawn, and I'll show you why I'm doing that now. I'm going to lower this jig on that side of the dock and bring it up the side there. Oh, there he was too. Got him. Right there. See? Oh, it's a magnolia too. It's not a very big one. Whoa, dude, let's calm down a little bit. See the black stripe? That's why you take good care of the shoreline. You get these guys up here. Oh, there he was. Got him. He came out from underneath the floating dock. Look at that. That's a young black crappie. That's not a spawner. He's just up here feeding. I mean, that dude will obviously spawn, but he's not up here spawning. No eggs in that guy. Alright guys, so obviously this is a granular. It looks like little rocks. So good thing is it's not very aerosolized, but it does say wear gloves when you're handling this stuff. But I'm literally going to take, it says take a plastic scoop, and of course I'm a red-blooded American. We have red solo cups. These are actually hefty, but hey, same difference. I'm going to use this, and I'm just going to broadcast it out. The wind's kind of in my face, so I'm going to do it off the dock, but I'm going to treat right here. I just don't want this blowing back on me because the wind's blowing at me. But I'm going to treat like this and just throw it out, and it's going to sink down and hit all the algae in the naiad that's up and down this bank. I'm going to do this entire shoreline here, and then in the cove in the back here, there's a good area that was solid. And so I'm going to hit the areas that were the worst covered last year. Alright, so let me show you what this stuff is. So here's a handful of vegetation straight out of the lake. And this little broadleaf thing, I think this is the primrose. I don't think it's going to do anything for that. But this other stuff is naiad, and that's this stuff right here. There's a bunch more of it over here. So this is the naiad, and I know you're looking at it, it's like, well, that doesn't seem like very much. Well, this isn't. The problem is, I'll try to get you a little bit of the video from last year. I'm pretty sure I posted in one of my fishing videos out here, but what happened is this stuff got so thick. This cove barely got hit, but the cove on the other side, you couldn't even barely pull the floating dock in there, much less fish it. I mean, it covered the entire cove like a blanket. I mean, it was super, super thick. Like, this stuff took over the pond. I mean, if it would just come up a little bit, it's actually very beneficial because it gives a lot of cover for the bait fish. And so I don't want to get rid of all of it, but it literally takes over the entire pond. And that's the only thing that I'm worried about, is when aquatic plants take over the pond, it's a problem. But like the primrose, I treated it last year early in the spring one time, one little batch of it, just to see if the chemical that I had would work. And it did. It took a while, but it worked. And I was like, well, it actually worked better to rake the primrose out, because you can take just a rake on a rope and throw the rake out, let it sink in it, and pull it out, and it pulls out an entire mat at a time. It's kind of heavy, but that primrose is better to rake out, but you're not going to rake enough of this out to do anything, and it flourishes so quickly that it'll literally take over the pond. And the problem is, I'm not going to be able to show you a before and after, because one, the water is a little bit dingy right now because we just had a pretty good storm, and even after that, you'll just see that there's none there, but there doesn't look like there's much here now, which there's not, but that's kind of the point. I'm going to treat now before it takes off. But you can see this stuff is green. This is fresh growth. So the bottom is actually covered. I saw it the other day before the storm where the water was clear, and it's literally all the way down here. It's coming up from the bottom about that high. And so it's going to take off. So before it gets to that point, I'm going to go ahead and treat. All right, guys, so my sunroom's here. I'm going to put the stake beds right here. I want to be able to hit it from the window or from the bank over here. So I'm going to stab these. I was kind of testing them. You can just push them down in the mud. Let me show you. So these are 1 by 2 by 8 footers is what this is. And so you can see just pushing it down to the mud, I've got a little over 2 foot sticking out, so it's almost 6 feet deep right here, which is deeper than I thought it was. But I brought this just in case. So that's how I'm going to do it. And I'm going to bring them towards the house. I don't really know how far I'm going to put them apart. I don't think there's an exact science to these things. Wow, you can literally just push these things straight down in the mud. I'm just going to put my weight on it. Whoa, I'm pushing the dock all over the place. All right, that's my homemade stake bed. It's not very big. However, if it works, I will build several more and I'll increase the size of them. But I'm going to see how well this one works. It's a little bit off the bank on purpose. It's in about 5 foot of water, maybe 6. Let's see how it does. Alright guys, technically this is day 3, but it's only the second day of real work out here. Day 2, I stopped on my way home from work, picked up a deck sander. They rent those at Home Depot, and I sanded down the deck just to strip off the top layer of, well, really I was trying to get the sap from the trees off of here and then take off a little bit of the stain that was on here. I'm going to re-stain it today. But before I get to that, I'm going to do that later this afternoon when it's the hottest part of the day. But for now, I've got gravel, and where I put the crappie stake beds over there, I'm going to go over there and dump this gravel in there. I don't know if this is going to do anything, but when I researched it online, it said that crappie prefer a hard bottom to spawn on, and this lake is not a hard bottom. And so I'm going to put this pea gravel. I've got 200 pounds of pea gravel. I'm going to put all in those stake beds and just try to form a hard bottom, just to try to see if it'll work. This gravel is super cheap. It's like 5 something a bag. It's ridiculously cheap. And then my aerator stopped working back in the late fall, and I think part of it has to do with the diffuser keeps getting clogged, and I've got a 120 liter air pump in there, but it's having a hard time keeping up because I've got so much of this weighted tubing on the bottom of the lake. I've got 100 feet of it on the bottom of the lake to run it that far out there. So I'm going to cut that shorter and see if that helps. All right guys, this is just all-purpose gravel. It's actually pea gravel. I'm not going to rinse it first. I probably should, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to rip it open and dump it straight into these stake beds. All right, that's 200 pounds of gravel right here within the stake beds. I don't know if that will actually benefit it or not. I've never done this before. Just gonna see how well that works. All right, guys, so this is my weighted tubing that goes and just lays across the bottom of the pond. So I'm fixing to pick it up. And use this to get to the diffuser. All right, so there's my diffuser. I had it strapped to a brick just to make sure it positioned itself upright, and I wanted these to be off the bottom. And what I did to make for easy cleaning is I had a bottle tied on a rope that was just under the water when the water was lower. Then I could just come out here and reach down in the water, pick it up, pull it out. However, the water is deeper now that I have the dam fixed properly, so the rope's not long enough. So I'm going to pull this tubing back out. You can see the aerator is doing phenomenally up here with that shorter line. There's no clogging. It's putting out a lot of oxygen. It's going to do very well this summer, I believe. It's looking great. That's like best case scenario, what you want on a pond aeration system. It's just dumping the bubbles out in there, just dumping them. Alright, the new stain on the deck looks good. It's still a little tacky. I'll have to do the floating dock another day. The aerator is ginning. It is doing very good. So today was a success. Alright, so this next part is completely unnecessary, but I'm doing it anyways. I planted some of this last year and I could see some of it already coming back up, but I've got a bag of Miracle-Gro potty mix where I'm going to plant some wildflowers, and then I'm going to put out some bird seed and some whole corn, and that's for the ducks and the geese, and this is for all the little colorful birds. So I'm going to use a little bit of that potty mix to cover up some of this, just to make sure that some of it comes up. And then I'm just going to put the bird seed and the corn out up and down the dam just to attract geese and ducks, and it brings in the wood ducks and all the stuff. And then my sister comes here and takes pictures. And so I cut down that black walnut. I didn't mean for the top of it to fall into the water, but the top of it fell in the water. The base of it is up there on the bank. But I got most of it out of the water, but that'll be a good perch for the wood ducks to land on before they come and feed. So she'll take pictures of them over here. Okay, so First things first, I am not baiting in anything that I'm hunting. It is springtime, guys. There are no hunting seasons open. And this bag of birdseed opens from the bottom of the bag, which is kind of annoying. But I'm just going to dump this out all the way up and down the dam here very liberally. This will bring in turkeys and ducks, little bluebirds. All right, so I've got corn and birdseed. You can see all my food plot mix right here, salt lick over there. I got corn and birdseed all the way down the dam. Here's where my wildflowers are going to be growing. Hopefully they'll grow right here pretty strong. We'll see. I don't know if that'll work or not, but you guys will get to see in about another month or so. All right, I'm about to get to work out here. I'm going to go around the pond today and get out as much of this primrose as I can. But I wanted to show you something that was really cool. I'm right here on the side of the house. This tree right here, check this out. I'm going to try not to spook them. You see? It's a little mallard hen nested in the base of that tree. She's got some eggs in there. I'm gonna try and not disturb her. The male is over here somewhere. I've seen him flying around this morning. But I'm gonna go around and get some of this primrose out. But ducks nesting around the pond is one of the perks. I've got little nesting boxes around here. They don't use them. Not the way that I've got them set up. I've got to adjust them if I want a duck to use those things. All right, so I've got my magic rake out here, and it's time to go get rid of some of this primrose out here. It's early in the spring. It's now the 1st of April. And although it's not overgrown yet, now is the best time to keep it from overgrowing by taking some of the clumps out. It's going to continue to grow throughout the summer. And I don't mind having this plant in the water. The problem is the backs of these coves are so shallow that it'll literally take over the whole cove if I don't knock the volume of it down some. So I'm fixing to take some of it out of the water. And this is the best way to get rid of it. I tried to chemically treat some last year just to see how it would do. It's far better just to get it out with a rake. Okay, so I built this rake to get the algae out, but it works for pretty much anything. And this primrose has no, it's not latched to the soil underneath. It's just kind of dangling there in the water. So you can literally just rake it out like that and drop it on the bank. And so literally you just throw this out. You'll feel it start to get heavy as it gets close to the bank. And you just pick it up and let it fall. And then grab some more that fell off, because it'll just start disconnecting in chunks. But again, once it lets go of all that water, it's really lightweight. See, and it'll just die up here on the bank, not being in the water. Easy stuff, guys. So everything growing behind this tree, back in that super shallow water, I'm gonna leave all of that. I don't fish back there anyways. I'm just gonna get this out here on this side. Most of my bluegill spawn right here, and this stuff will be right in the way. But it literally just comes off like that. Really easy, really simple. All right, guys, so it is probably, I don't know, a little over 2 weeks since I did all the original stuff that you just seen on this video. And I'm still going. So I took some little time off of working out here to go fishing, but now I'm back at it. And to show you the condition of the pond, you can see that it's starting to look swampy again, which it does this every spring. All the stuff that you see floating is just stuff out of the trees. And then the green tinge is actually pollen. I've got a few people that comment on my videos and say, no, that's algae. Yeah, they're algae. Algae is in there, but when it light switches overnight to green, it's pollen. It's just a pollen dump out of the trees. It happens every year around this time. It's normal, it's fine, there's nothing wrong. And so I'm gonna put this muck reducer in there. Now this does a couple of things. I made a video last year of how I got rid of this stuff, and it was like pond clear or whatever I put in there. It's all the same stuff. Anytime you see a muck reducer or a pond clear, all this is bacteria. That's all it is. This is bacteria. It's bacteria that's already in the pond. You've already got this bacteria in there. I'm not adding anything extra. I'm just basically doubling down. I'm adding a lot more bacteria to the water. The water's finally warm enough to be able to put this in there. I think it says it's recommended for like 60 degrees or something like that. Temperature's above 50, right? And what this does is it's the bacteria that eats all the vegetation. And so when you live on a pond like this that's surrounded by woods, all the leaves and the tree limbs and all that stuff falls into the pond, and it creates muck, and then it's decomposing in the water. This is the bacteria that eats the plant material. So the pollen is plant material. These leaves and all this stuff is plant material. This eats it up. And in return, it'll clear the bottom of your pond, so the bottom of the pond will be free of litter right here. It won't take all the sticks away, but it'll take all the leaves and crap, and your bottom of your pond will look good, and it clears the water. I just opened this up. I've never bought this brand, this Ultimate Muck Reducer from Tractor Supply, but it has these giant tablets in there. I mean, these are giant. Usually the tablets I see are much smaller than this, and they probably recommend using gloves. Obviously, I'm not wearing any, but I'm a dude, it's what we do. But I'm gonna throw some of these out in the water and just spread them out down the bank. Throw one there under the dock. And these will basically dissolve and release all the bacteria in the water. And you wanna throw this anywhere you want the vegetation gone. So obviously up and down this bank in front of the house, I want all this gone. I'm not really worried about the rest of the pond. I just want it to look nice right here, and it'll clear the water in the whole pond because it'll dissolve into the water column. But it'll actually free up some debris around here. All right, so I put out about half the bucket. I'm gonna save the other half for a couple of weeks from now, or maybe a couple of months from now even, and just see what this does and see if it does enough for me. If it does not, then I'll treat again. And just, you know, for the hippies out there that always got to make a comment, they put a nice little picture of kids playing in the water. It doesn't actually say it on here, but usually the water is safe to go in immediately after putting this in there. It's not going to hurt it at all. This is not harmful to humans. It's not harmful to fish. It's not harmful to eat the fish after you put this in there. You can pause the video right there if you want to read what's on the actual box, or you can just Google Muck Reducer. They've got a bunch of different brands of this stuff. I haven't found that there's any difference between the brands. This is just what I chose to use. And again, I will show you what the water looks like when Amy gets here in a couple of weeks. The pond looks pretty good. You're gonna notice it's got a really weird colored tinge to it. And what this is, this doesn't happen every year, but every few years it does with these cypress trees up here. There's sap, when they sap and it drops almost like rain out here, somehow, I don't know whether it's what falls out of the trees or what seeps out of the root systems, but it turns the water this reddish color. And when I mean reddish color, I mean it'll dye everything. It'll dye your fishing line, it'll dye your fishing rods. If it gets on your clothes, it'll dye your clothes. But this doesn't happen every season, but that's what that color is. That's not like dissolved vegetation or anything. That's actually sap from the cypress trees. The crappie steaks, they didn't really work out this year. It was a good attempt. It's got more bluegill in it than anything. I did not catch a single crappie out of those. I may have put them a little bit too close, you know, first time doing it. So I'm probably going to pull a few of them up and space them out. Maybe next year it'll work a little better. I don't know. It's full of bluegill right now. You can catch 1 million bluegill out of it. The pond treatment that I put in, that I don't even remember the name of it now. It's been so many weeks ago. It's the 1st of May right now, by the way. It did prevent an algae bloom significantly. There's almost no algae in here. There's very little algae in here. But that southern naiad is pretty pervasive. It reduced it significantly, I think, but there's still a ton of it that's come up all over the pond. It's hard to see it because the water's not clear. I think that stuff did really good for algae. I would rather look for something else to treat the naiad. Although it did keep it knocked down a pretty good bit, I'm pretty sure that by the end of the summer it's going to be significant in this pond. So the primrose did pretty good. It stayed down. It's been about 7 weeks since I originally raked some of it out, and it has stayed pretty much neutered this whole time. I'll show you some of it around the pond over here, where some of it has started to come back in those places that I raked it out, but for the most part it has stayed gone. So raking out that primrose really works well. I would not treat that with any chemicals at all. It's just that southern naiad that really fills the bottom, you know, of the pond that really requires a treatment. So I'm gonna have to figure out something else for that next year, but I think for this year I'm good. But I want to show you some of the spoils of doing this, because you do all this work and it's obviously beautiful to look at out here, but there's also some really good fishing to be had. Now I did have some friends out here and they caught a bunch of the bluegill out here that I had been feeding out from the window, and they didn't want to be on YouTube or I'd put them on here, but I'm fixing to go out here and catch some of these fish and kind of show them to you. All right, you can't see it because the water in my pond is not clear, but there is a ton of bluegill beds up there, and I probably should have put a split shot on this because I can't really throw it very far. If I had night crawlers I could cast it up in there, but these red worms are not quite as heavy. But I should be on the edge of the beds right there. This is all bluegill beds right here. Oh yeah, I got him, look. Woo. Wow, that's a big dude. Look at him run. Dang. Look at how big these bluegill are, guys. That's insane. That's way bigger than those ones I was catching at the pond with Amy. Look how big that is. That's way bigger than my hand. And that's where that feed comes in. All right, I'm throwing a little bit to the back there. I'm going to try to get a good shell cracker. Probably won't get it on this bed. I got a little bit too close to this bed here. Oh, I got him. I got him already, look. Wow, that was fast. Oh, and that is a shell cracker, look. Look how big this shell cracker is. Is that not ridiculous? This is how big the shell crackers are in this pond from feeding and just letting them grow. Look, that's 2 hands on it. That's a pretty big shell cracker, right? All right, so this is where we had Amy watching. We had her ground blind originally over here, and it was right on top of the ducks, and the ducks were seeing her. So we put her back over there. Her blind's gone, but she had a blind set up over there, and she was taking pictures of them on this perch right here. And you'll see that the wildflowers that I planted actually came up. There's not a bunch of them up and bloomed yet, but there'll be more throughout the summer. But you can see most of those yellow ones. There's some purples and some blues down in there. A lot of the wildflowers did come up, which probably made for some interesting photos. I'll have to see when she sends them to me, but a lot of the flowers came up. I'm expecting a whole lot more to come up as the summer progresses, so it'll be really pretty right over here. But the wildlife did come in here pretty thick. The turkeys kind of stayed away, but the ducks are in here pretty heavy. I don't know if you can see it, guys. I'm in the back of this cove back here. That grass right there is that southern naiad. That's this stuff right here. I just caught some on my frog. This is the stuff that I was trying to reduce out of the pond. So it's clearly still growing back here, but I could tell that it's significantly stunted because this was solid last year all the way to the surface. So it's definitely reduced it dramatically. And you could see right here, this is where I raked all that primrose out. I was walking along the bank right there. And so a lot of it came back up. That little pile, that little pile, that little pile, but it's really small and insignificant. So it's not that big a deal. Like it came up a little bit more down there than it did out here. But the difference is in like another few weeks from now, from last year, that stuff had grown all the way out here. And it was literally, you know, 30, 40 feet out from the bank, solid. You couldn't fish, you couldn't throw through it or anything. So raking that out was significant. All right, so I'm not getting them on the top. I'm not getting them on mid column. So I'm gonna let this sink all the way to the bottom right there. I'm just gonna watch my slack line until it stops pulling away from me. All right, so it stopped. That means I'm on the bottom. Now I'm just gonna, as slow as I can, reel it right back to me, right across the bottom. It's probably steadily it's probably steadily getting a little closer to the surface as I'm coming back, but it's staying pretty close down there until it gets right up here by the dock. There he was, got him. What have I got? Oh, it's another shell cracker. It's not a bad shell cracker. That is not what I'm looking for. All right, these fish must be sitting right on the bottom. I fished the top and mid column, and I can't seem to, either these fish are all bunched up somewhere, which I doubt, because there was a really nasty storm last night and they probably got scattered, but I don't know if they would have went to the bottom or if the storm would have turned the crappie off. There he is, got him. I think that's a crappie. They were right on the bottom. This one's pulling pretty good too. That's not a bad dude. Thick. Ooh, I got him. It didn't even make it to the bottom, whatever this is. It's a nice fish though. It feels nice. Oh, it's a bass. Nice. Took my gulp. I threw on that tree over there. My gulp didn't even make it to the bottom. He took the whole gulp off. Alright, now I think I'm on the bottom. Slow retrieve it back through these treetops here. There was something. Yeah, I got him. Yeah, it's a crappie. Another nice one too. Not exactly a slab, but that's no slouch for a pond crappie. Let's see what might be over there by those stake beds. Something's in there. It'll probably be bluegill, in which case I probably need to throw a night crawler in there. Oh, there he was. I got something. What have I got? Oh, a bass. This guy was not in the stake beds. He was in this treetop right here. Little guy. All right, so I just fed the fish, and you can see Frank and Fred right there, the two grass carp. Turtles, there's a blue catfish down in there, swimming around getting its fair share. And there's tons of bluegill. A lot of the pellets have sunk, like they sink when they hit. They don't all float, but there are bluegill everywhere in there. But then you got the big grass carp coming in there to get them a little piece. And of course the turtles, and there's turtles everywhere. All right, guys, it is now June the 8th. Quite a bit of time has passed since I did the initial pond treatments. And I just want to show you what that southern naiad has turned into. Even with that initial treatment of that stuff that I put in here, I don't even remember the name of it now. But I'm going to show you all the way around the bank. You can see all that stuff growing, and it grows for about 15 feet out all the way around, and the backs of the coves are solid. The water's deep enough, it doesn't seem to be going all the way across the cove, so I guess I'm thankful for that. But I'm going to show you what it looks like now right here under me. So you can see in the sun over there, it's a lot easier to see, but there's the stake bed. I'm standing on the roof of the sunroom here, but you can see all of that is southern naiad right there, and it goes for a pretty good ways out from the bank. And then this over here has been coated in algae now, all the way back into that cove is pretty solid back there. And so the treatment didn't really do a whole lot as far as keeping it squared away for the summer. So it is starting to take over the pond pretty good. And keeping in mind, it's got probably 3 more months of growing left at minimum. It's got the rest of June, July, and August, and probably September too, and it'll probably start dying off in October. But it's all the way down the bank. It's all the way down that bank. It's all the way in the back cove. So this stuff is all the way around the pond. And so it's 80 something odd degrees today. It was raining this morning. So I'm not going to do it today, but I may get out here tomorrow and try to rake some of this out. I don't know if it's going to work, but let's just see. All right, so I've just used some basic baling wire to put this 2.5 pound weight onto my algae rake that's kind of bent up. I need to bend some of these back out, but I'm going to use this to rake out some of that grass. Cool thing about aluminum is it bends fairly easily. Well, that just broke. That's not very good. I'm just going to leave it hooked. Basically, I just need enough weight to push this to the bottom. And so this grass is growing, never mind the grass clippings, but the grass is growing all the way down this whole bank right here. All right. It's definitely working. It's harder to pull this thing in now. Yeah. Look at all the air bubbles coming up. Wow. That's heavy. All right. So just one pull with this rake got a tremendous amount of grass out of the water. I'm gonna do it again, the same line, see what happens. That's the second pass I got. Not quite as much, but a pretty good bit on 2 passes. All right, I'm gonna go a little further out from the bank. Ooh, yep, you can see this thing pulls up. It's bringing a lot of grass. Holy crap. All right, so you probably can't tell it much from the video here, but I have pretty much raked everything from here, you know, about a 70-yard stretch, 60 or 70-yard stretch of bank right here in front of the sunroom and the dock down there. And this is very, very labor intensive. This stuff is really heavy coming up with all that saturation, and when it pulls the mud up from the bottom, it's even heavier. And the reason why this is not a feasible option, you know, I get all kind of comments on my channel about, it's mostly like, I don't know if they're from Europe or whatever, where these people watch this channel from, but they say, well, you guys are just lazy putting those chemicals in the water. And we're like, no, we've tried the mechanical options like this to try to remove it, and the problem is this stuff grows so fast. I've just raked all this out, and you can't really tell it because the algae's still sitting on the top, but you can't get all of it is the thing. You can't get all of it, and it's going to start growing back immediately. And so in a matter of 2 or 3 weeks, it's going to look like I didn't even do anything. And I don't know about you, I don't have time to come out here and rake this pond every 2 or 3 weeks because this uncontrollable grass is growing. So I'm going to do a couple of things. I'm going to rake out here along the shoreline right here by the house where I can at least fish and stuff, and it doesn't look like a complete eyesore in front of the house. And then I'm going to look at getting grass carp. There's a fish hatchery about 2 hours away, and they sell grass carp for $12 a piece, and they come in about 8 to 12 inches long. So I'm going to go buy a dozen of those or so, maybe a few more, and dump those in here. But I'm going to look for a way to chemically treat this at least a little bit, to help knock it down a little bit. Okay, so funny story time. I raked out grass for about 45 minutes, and then once all the mud settled in the water, I realized that I didn't rake out very much. So I came out here for another couple of hours and raked more grass, trying to get as much of it off the bottom in this short little section as I could. It was way more labor intensive than I originally thought once the water started clearing and I could see how much grass was left in there. But anyways, I'm raking out here right in front of the sunroom, and I totally forgot, and I actually knew this. This is so weird. My water main runs across the pond, believe that or not. It runs across the pond and runs up a hill to this road over here. It's crazy, but I'm throwing this rake out, dragging it across the bottom, and it catches, and I'm thinking it caught on a stick, and I yanked it. And when I yanked it, I broke that water line. And so I'm having to do a repair job in the middle of the pond. So, you know, if it's not one thing, it's another out here is what it seems to be. But let me just show you. So that's the 3/4 inch main line that runs across the pond and then runs up that hill. There's a road up there. But I just took this 4x4 post and just tapped it down in the mud on the bottom, and then wire tied this thing on it so I could work above the water and let it dry out. But then I ran Aquapex. I'm going to eventually have to replace that all the way across because it's 40 years old. But for now, I got a Band-Aid on it, and this will get me through for the moment. But you know, so I've got this, I just tightened that down, and so I think I'm good to go. And then I'm gonna cut this off and let it lay back on the bottom, but then later I'm gonna come in and run a line all the way up. This is the kind of stuff that happens out here, especially when you forget dumb shit. All right, it is Saturday, June the 29th. It is officially exactly 3 weeks since I originally raked the grass out of this bank. And the grass was already here last weekend, but I didn't have time to deal with this. But my yard's getting bad. I need to do my yard, and I'm gonna go ahead and work on the pond today. So let me just show you what that grass has done, that southern naiad has done since I raked it out. Now, I spent about probably a total of pushing 4 hours out here 3 weeks ago to make sure. When I first raked it, I thought I got it. And then as soon as the kind of cloudiness went away in the water and the sun came out, I saw that I only took small, you know, amounts of it out. So I came back through and raked for some hours, and just look. It almost looks like I never did anything, right? You can see it, it's growing all the way back down there. I had cleared out that entire corner back there. All of this stuff is growing. You can kind of see where I threw it up here on the bank, and it's kind of dead but unsightly. I probably should have thrown that in the wheelbarrow and hauled it off somewhere, but that's what I did with it. So raking it causes even more work, because now you got to take it somewhere, because throwing it up here to die just makes it look gross. But you can see I had all this cleared out. Now there's some patches like right there where it didn't come back in, but for the most part, all of it grew back. All right, so I'm gonna take you on a really quick tour of the pond just so you can see just how bad this stuff is. So I'm gonna speed this video up right here just so you can get an idea of what I'm contending with. You can see a lot more of those flowers came up over there. I'm not really sure why, but only the yellow ones came up. So I'll probably plant a lot more of those next year, but let's keep going. All right, so as you can see, it looks like a lot of algae, and it is. The algae's growing on top of the grass, but it wouldn't be growing there. The water's deep enough now where the algae doesn't really penetrate to the bottom all over the pond anymore. But had the naiad not come all the way to the surface, all that algae wouldn't be there. So I've tried mechanically removing this stuff. I don't have time to do this every other week. And what you guys can't see, or probably not gonna show up good on the video, is there's all this southern naiad out here, but what you don't see is it's broken up and it's floating in the water everywhere. So anywhere you try to fish, even where the grass isn't there, the dead or broken pieces of the grass are still out there, and it still hangs on your baits, ultimately making this pond, you could fish it, but you're limited to like a topwater frog. Most any other bait that you throw in here is going to be coated in grass almost every cast, and it's very frustrating. And I have this pond for fishing purposes, and that's why I have it. And so if I can't fish it, it kind of defeats the purpose. So let me show you how I'm going to treat this, and hopefully, fingers crossed, this treatment actually works.